All right, welcome back, guys. Another afternoon game. We had the Eagles travel to play the Jets. I'm sure everyone was surprised to see the Eagles fall 20 to 14. I mean, Jalen Hurts, by fantasy purposes, had a fantastic week, especially for how we saw quarterbacks perform this week. He was 28 of 45, 280 yards, a touchdown, three interceptions, 8 rushes, 47 yards with another touchdown, 22.9 fantasy weeks or fantasy points. As a fantasy owner, I mean, you're happy to see it, but realistically, it was kind of crazy to see the Eagles struggle like this. Um, their main struggle, honestly, came on the ground. DeAndre Swift rushed for 18 yards. Gainwell rushed for 13, and Boston Scott rushed for 1. So their running back room combined had 32 yards, and Jalen Hurts had 47. It just was kind of an ugly week. And to finish DeAndre Swift, he only had the 18 rushing yards on 10 carries. What really saved his fantasy day was 8 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets. That is something we love to see in full PPR formats. He finished
Oh yeah.
17.8 fantasy points. He only played 57% of the snaps, but again, Gainwell played 41, and it was almost like, why did he play 41 when he gets 2 carries and saw 2 targets through the air and caught one of them for 4 yards? It's still obviously DeAndre Swift's backfield. It was just kind of weird to see the Eagles not be able to run the ball efficiently at all with that offensive line. But it is what it is. It was still fantasy-wise good week for Jalen Hurts, good week for DeAndre Swift. To get to A.J. Brown, a good week for him. He had 7 catches, 131 yards, 9 targets, 20.1 fantasy points. I mean, again, a good week. Devonta Smith, we've seen games like this from him before. We'll see more of them. 5 catches, 44 yards, 9.4 fantasy points. He actually had 11 targets, so he out-targeted A.J. Brown. It just was not his week this week. I mean, 9.4 from, you drafted him as like a wide receiver 2 or 3. By no means is it good at all, but it's not an absolutely terrible week.
No, and he would have had more. He dropped like
Oh yeah, like
15, 20-yard drop over the middle.
that. I mean, he would have ran another 10, 15. Like he was wide open. So I mean,
Yeah.
those are just things you got to deal with. This is still a
Happens,
super,
man.
yeah, this is a super high-powered offense. And when I'm looking at, the fantasy points they still got, despite only scoring 14 points in the actual game, it was an off week for the Eagles, but fantasy-wise, it wasn't a crazy off week for them in your lineup. Even Dallas Goedert, 5 catches, 42 yards, 8 targets, 9.2 fantasy points.
He's back.
Yeah, he's back, and he's the top of the list of the ones where I was like, why is he gone? Like, it just didn't make sense why he was getting no volume to start the season. This is more like what I would expect from Dallas Goedert, anywhere between like that 5 to 8 target range, around, 4 or 5 catches, 40, 50 yards. He sneaks in the end zone. He has a really good week. I mean, he's a must start fantasy tight end every single week. And
Yeah.
he's on such a good offense that you just have to. It is worth noting that the Eagles did just sign Julio Jones. What that will mean, I'm not sure. He is really old. They did it because Watkins is on the IR. They kind of had a void there. I mean, we'll see what Julio has left in the tank. I don't think it's really going to spell too much for any of the receiving threats. I don't think he's really going to come in and take too much of that. What is funny to you about Julio Jones going there?
What's not funny about it?
He's like third. I think he's like 33 at this point. You know what? Get my boy Julio a ring, please. I mean, I'm all here for it. It just
I mean, I love Julio Jones. It's like, okay.
yeah, out of the receiving options
All
out there,
right.
there was kind
Okay.
of rumors. I mean, there was no official rumors from like the Eagles, but we were seeing that they may be interested in like a Hunter Renfro or someone like that. And it made sense, but salary cap wise, Renfro's on a big contract. You can sign Julio extremely cheap. it does make sense to me. So again, we'll have more updates, and honestly, we're gonna have to wait to see Julio get integrated in and even start playing before we have like a definitive what his role there is gonna be. Um, on the other side of the ball, I think we've learned, and I told Shift this before we started recording. If you put the Jets just in the Super Bowl, they don't have to get there. They just have to be in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, against the Eagles. They're gonna compete. I don't know why, but the Jets won the game, and when you look at their stats, they are not great by any means. Zach Wilson, 19 of 33, 186 yards, 10.9 fantasy points. I mean, it's a very mediocre week. Zach Wilson.
Oh, that's why they signed Julio Jones, because they have Olamide Zaccheaus out there for 57 snaps.
Yeah, well, yeah, Quez Watkins went down, and that's who they had to throw in. Yeah.
They had no one, Britton Covey.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's.
So it makes sense, but it's still funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, Zach Wilson didn't throw a touchdown, didn't throw an interception, rushed for 15 on the ground with 4 rushes, 10.9 fantasy points. That's a very Zach Wilson-esque game. I can admit I was wrong. My sit of the week was Breece Hall this week, and I was right when it was Kyren Williams against the Eagles. Breece Hall, I mean, at least on the ground, right? He was 12 of 39, did not do too much on the ground. He got a touchdown, so that obviously helps his fantasy value. His real damage, other than that touchdown, came through the air. He caught 5 passes for 54 yards on 5 targets, 20.3 fantasy points, so a fantastic week for him. Played 66% of the snaps. Again, Dalvin, drop him if you have him. He's just does not have it at all. The only receiver worth mentioning was Garrett Wilson. He had 8 catches for 90 yards on 12 targets, 17 fantasy points. Very solid week for him. The second highest receiver, Randall Cobb, 2 fantasy points. Allen Lazard, 1.8. Xavier Gibson, 1.8. Nothing more to say there. We thought maybe Allen Lazard could have some fantasy value. He had that one decent game. But as we've seen, his highest targets on the season are 5. Other than that, he has 3 4s and 2 3s. Allen Lazard, not even a guy I'm looking at. Tyler Conklin, the Eagles have been not great against the tight end. They held him in check, I would say, for this game. He had 3 catches, 24 yards on 4 targets, 5.4 fantasy points, 71% of snaps. He's still a guy I like. It's just as the season goes on, we're starting to see like guys like Jonnu Smith are still widely available. And just from what we have seen in involvement in an offense, I think there's better options out there. But again, the Jets are going into a bye, and then Conklin's still a guy. It's like a per matchup basis. I guess he's still in the conversation, but I think we're getting to a point where there may be better options.
Guess who the Rams just signed?
Running back? Lenny.
Myles Gaskin.
I thought it was going to be Lenny. You heard it here immediately. Myles Gaskin on the Rams.
Okay.
Okay. I don't even know what to do with that info. I thought it'd be Leonard Fournette. That would have made a lot more sense, but okay.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, this was an ugly game. The Eagles, you know what you're going to get, though. This was like the absolute down, at least scoring-wise. But fantasy-wise, again, had a solid week. The Jets are the Jets. You have Breece Hall. You have Garrett Wilson. Those are the only 2 you can really trust.
Mm-hmm.
You have anything?
Maybe Zerline.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe Zerline.
If they want to get 3 picks every week, hell, the Jets defense too. But
yeah.
Nah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty cut and dry with these 2 teams. We know after that one game where AJ Brown didn't look too happy on the sideline,
he's been happy.
He's kind of blown up every single week after that. So AJ Brown, it's so obvious. And I think Devontae Smith, you kind of just have to throw him in there because you never know. He's a guy like kind of like Gabe Davis, except he's obviously going to get a lot more volume.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, what is he going to do with that volume on any given week?
Yeah.
But I mean, based on where you drafted him, unless you plan on trading him, you have to start him.
Yeah. Is that all?
And yeah, the Jets, it's obvious. You have Brees, you start Brees. Well, not this week because they will be on bye, but every other week you have Brees, you start him. You have Wilson, you start him. Garrett, not Zach.
Yeah.
And not Zach.
All right.
And
Well,
that'll be all for this one.
yeah, I mean, this one was an easy one. It was a bad week for the Eagles, but again, fantasy wise, and that's what we're here for, wasn't a terrible week. That's going to do it for
Yeah.
this one. We appreciate all the support. Again, any questions, comments, advice you need, feel free to drop it in the comments. Until next time.